All right, I'll get right into it. I had a really shitty flight today. I'm here in Orlando for work, and I had a really, really shitty flight, and it was a lot of anxiety. And what that made me think of is all the different things that we do for our jobs in corporate America. So it's not only just the jobs that you're working at and trying and having your, kind of corporate burnout with just the daily, things that you have to deal with in your job role. But there's all these other sort of ancillary anxieties and ways that you get burnt out. For me today, it was about flying, but I'm going to start this talk about a series today about anxiety, ancillary or corporate anxiety, the hidden kind of ways or identify a number of areas where you can really experience a lot of anxiety in your corporate job. So today I was flying. I'm here on a Sunday in Orlando for a big trade show. There's going to be a lot of fun with it, but it's also, just to illustrate what you're giving up and what you're working for in corporate America. And so I was on this flight. It was very, very bumpy. I've been on bumpy flights before. It's not my favorite thing to do, but this particular one I always get real nervous when they say flight attendants take your jump seats. So there's a number of things that happened on this stupid flight. Number one, they kept saying many times, flight attendants take your jump seats, because there was several areas of bumpiness. And then also this particular airline really pissed me off, because then they would really, the pilot would say, flight attendants take your jump seats, as if I wasn't stressed out enough. Then he says, flight attendants take your jump seats. And then a few minutes later, the stupid air flight attendant would get on and say, oh, we have to take our jump seats. Yeah, I get it. You already told us. Ugh. Anyway, so that doesn't really help somebody who has flight anxiety. But I did have flight anxiety today, and it just was one thing I would, for the airlines, I would say maybe just dial it back a little bit with the constant announcements about how shitty the flight is going to be. That would be helpful, because people like me, although I don't let it stop me, I don't like flying. And but anyway, back to the main topic. The main topic is just the anxiety and different things that we're going through in our lives that might burn us out. Here's how I've handled the flight anxiety that I experience, my fear of flying, that I really just have. I've never let it stop me. And for a while there, it was out of control. So back in 20, 30 years ago, in one of my first corporate jobs, I used to have to take a 6 a.m. flight to New York, because my company was too cheap to pay for the overnight, and I was young enough and stupid enough to say, oh, that's okay. Anyway, so I would take a 6 a.m. flight to New York, a lot of flight anxiety. I remember particularly this one flight where it was bumpy. Wasn't as bumpy as the one that happened today, but I would be very, very white knuckling it the whole time. And I was an inexperienced flyer. And by the time I would get off the flight, I was exhausted. And I had to be in Manhattan at, 6 a.m. flight. I had to be in Manhattan at, I don't know, maybe 11:30 or noon or something for a lunch meeting. And so by the time I got off the flight, I was exhausted and I was worn out. And I finally said to myself, I can't do this anymore. This is crazy. And I don't know what happened in my life. Maybe I read something or somebody counseled me on fear of flying. And they really just said it's kind of like driving, along a road. I'm not afraid to drive. And it's just bumps in the road, and that's really all it is. And so I was able to think about it that way and really control a lot of my anxiety. Today wasn't the best, but again, it's about, what we're exposed to. Now, like I said, I don't let it stop me, because, number one, I want to experience life. I haven't given up on life, and I don't let fear stop me for the most part. But this is an area where I particularly experience some anxiety. But there's other areas for people. So, as we're in our 50s and we're Gen X, middle 50s, and we can kind of see the finish line to retirement or a way out of the 9 to 5. Let's recognize, number one, how far we've come and what we've learned. So I've learned in my mind how to handle flight anxiety. and we're getting better at that. But there's other forms of anxiety. So, there's public speaking anxiety, imposter syndrome. Can I really do this job? Those type of things that I'm going to be addressing in future series. But today was really about the fact that, hey, it's Sunday. I have a 9-to-5 job. I like my job, but I'm on the road on a Sunday on a shitty flight, and I'm particularly stressed out today. Now I'm here and I'm ready to have fun, and it'll be a nice trip. But let's just recognize the ways we get burned out, and it's not always the particular, the actual job. It's all the things that go along with the job. And anyway, so if you like the video, I really want to know, what do you have flight anxiety? What anxiety are you experiencing at work? It'd be interesting to know, and we can talk about that in future series. But what do you do to combat flight anxiety? Me personally, I say Hail Mary, the Our Father, the Glory Be. That's what I do. Anyway, I've got other videos on corporate America and how to navigate through for us Gen Xers. And I'd hope you check out my channel here. And have a great week, everybody. I landed, I'm here, and it's going to be a whole week of trade show fun.